Good morning, my friends. Do not listen to pro writers. This was a post from a friend of mine, Lucy V. Hay, an author, an editor, someone who can help people with their screenplays and novels and that type of thing. She posted that on her social media feeds, and I'll put a link somewhere to her because she is brilliant to listen to. She is brilliant to read. Um, do not listen to pro writers. She wanted to grab your attention. Um, and her point was that the challenge of taking everything from those professionals was that you may get a very limited window, a very limited view of how to accomplish things, how to write stories based on their experiences, things that may become very outdated depending on how active they are as writers and sort of their perspectives on writing. As a storyteller, as a student of storytelling, as a teacher of storytelling, I have a crap ton of books about storytelling. I mean, these are just some of them. These are some, you don't need to know the titles, but, I got this one and I got this one, sorry, that one. And I mean, I go all the way back to like an old classic about improv because, you can't shut me up about improv, obviously. The science of storytelling, the science of writing characters. I have a ton of books because I'm always trying to figure out new ways to talk about storytelling. And a lot of people, when I'm teaching classes, people are like, can you recommend any books? I'm like, yeah, I can totally recommend books, but I don't know that you're ready for the books. And that's not meant as a condescending statement of like, I'm the professional and you're not. The reality is the pro, the studied arbiter of how to do things is not necessarily your friend, depending on where you are in your development as a storyteller or in your development as anything you're doing, any passions you're following. The expert, or more broadly, just expertise, may not mean a lot. As I think a lot of you know, I'm a science nerd. I actually trained as a scientist, worked as a scientist for several years as a biochemist. And I think back on my undergraduate training and some of my graduate training, graduate school. A lot of the things we were taught in class, I never understood when I was taught them. I learned them, I passed my tests, I eventually got my bachelor's and master's degree. But it wasn't until I was actually in the laboratory setting, trying to apply the principles that I'd had thrown at me, that I began to understand what the instructors were talking about. It wasn't until I was actually doing the thing that any of it meant anything to me. The same, I think, is always a risk when people are looking to the professionals in their chosen endeavor and looking at what they do and trying to figure out how to match that. You're always going to find yourself coming up short. And what you read in a book, what you learn from a podcast or from a video like this, isn't necessarily going to mean anything until you're ready for it to mean something. It's about contextualization. It's about seeing these things in action. It's about actually trying to do the thing you want to do. And it can be very discouraging if someone's telling you how to do something, giving you a path, and you're just kind of stumbling along blindly, trying to follow this algorithm or whatever you want to describe it as, this flow chart, and it's just not working for you. I own a lot of books. I got a lot of books. There's no shortage of books. And they're all valuable. They're all incredibly well thought out. I really respect a lot of these writers. I don't always agree with them, and that's fine. But you know what? I can't use the entire book. I can't use the entire content of the book in any one sitting. No one book is going to show me a path to success or even a path to creative self expression. But there's bound to be something in the book that I can use today. Or at least, and if there isn't, that's fine. I've read the book. I've studied, I've listened to the podcast, I've watched the talk, I've been to the film festival, I've been, whatever it is. When I teach, I don't expect my students to be able to use everything I give them because some of it's not going to be germane. Some of it's not going to be on point for them at that point. Some of it's not going to, a lot of it's not going to be what they need at this moment. And I stress that with them best I can. I'm not giving my students the answer to how to do what they want to do because in a classroom of 15 people, there are 15 different ways of doing things. They have to find their own path. All I'm trying to do is show them the paths that other people have taken to highlight certain aspects, open certain passages and thought processes that they may at some point be able to tap into. They're all pretty much novice writers when they come to me. This is often their very first screenplay, possibly their very first fiction. So they don't know what they need yet. And I don't know what they need yet. So I give them multiple ways into a situation, not a single path. It may be years before they can incorporate even 25% of what I put in front of them. And I do warn them, I am teaching them from the end of a fire hose. Don't try to absorb it all at once. Take in what works, what helps, and ignore the rest. And that's kind of what you have to do with expertise. You take in what resonates with you, what aligns with the experiences you've been having, and you set aside the rest. You go, okay, I don't know how to use that today. I don't know what that is today. So I'll set it aside. It's not necessarily useless to me, but I don't have a use for it yet. And so you set it aside. Again, I've got all these books. I can go back to them. You can make your lists and hold files of links and all sorts of things. And go back to them. Nothing is ephemeral. When I teach, often we are recording the class, because a lot of what I teach is on Zoom, so the students can refer back to it. They get the slides after each lecture so they can go back to them. And I will reference previous classes when giving them assignments or trying to string things together so they can see how these things are connected. Expertise is a wonderful thing, but it can be completely useless until you know why you need it. Well, not completely useless, but again, you don't know what you need yet, necessarily. You make a guess. Does this make sense? Does that feel right? Does this work for what I'm trying to do? Experts are just at a more advanced stage of the same thing we're all going through, right? Storytellers are constantly challenged to tell stories. They're constantly learning new things. And if they're not, I promise you they're just telling the same story again and again and again and again because it worked. And eventually, I personally feel like if you fall into that trap, at some point it won't work. Because why would I need to buy your new book? Why would I need to read your next screenplay if it's just like the last one? There's nothing new. You're not growing. This is what I love about the Austin Film Festival, which has a big writers conference to it, is the writers that come to speak, and this happens elsewhere as well, the writers that come to speak stay and hang out and chat and talk because they're still learning. They can learn from us as much as the amateurs or the less developed careerists than as we can learn from them. They have more experience, so their word sometimes carries more weight. But the reality is, we're all figuring this out as we go along. So when you read things, when you try to absorb information from podcasts and blogs and magazine articles and whatever your source of information is for whatever it is you want to do, even conversations with others who are doing the same thing, listen for what makes sense today. Listen for what you think might be helpful to challenge yourself today. But don't try to apply all of it. Don't assume the experts have the answer, because there is almost never the answer. There are multiple answers. There are multiple approaches. There are multiple ways. And part of your journey is going to be figuring out what your version of that is, what your path is or paths are. Because again, even as an individual, we have multiple paths to a destination or a series of destinations. Don't give too much weight to the experts in the sense of theirs are the words of God. Because even God's fallible. Even God you kind of have to look. And I'm not particularly religious, so apologies if that offended anyone. These are not commandments. None of these are commandments. They're just approaches. They're just ways of jumping into something that are valuable for you to know about. But if you can't use them, set them aside and look for something you can use. Adapt. Try things. Experiment. Fail, as we've talked about so many times. This is an adventure. There are no guarantees, and yet it can be a wonderful experience, even when it doesn't go the way we were hoping it would go. It's all in the attitude. So cut yourself some slack. Don't reach for the stars that somebody else has reached for. Reach for your own stars. By seeing what they did and going, okay, I can use some of that. I'll set aside the rest of it. If you want to buy books like me, I'm a book addict, go for it. But again, know that not all of what's there is going to be useful to you right away. That's okay. It's not a failing in your part. It's not a misunderstanding in your part. It's not ignorance in your part. It's you're not there yet. It doesn't do anything for you yet. It may never do anything for you, and that's okay. In any event, these videos are always getting longer and longer and longer. So have a wonderful, self-expressive week ahead of yourself. Leave a comment. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know who your favorite authors are. And again, I'll put a link to my friend Lucy somewhere around this video so that you can go visit her and see what she has to say, because I think she's pretty brilliant. And she's got different perspectives than I do. And that's brilliant. I love that. Take care. Be creative. Be happy. Be excited. Be adventurous. Take care.